between jumping and landing, but I have to make each one of them count. During training in Washington, D.C., we spent an entire week leaping out of moving cars to prepare for a moment like this. I racked up plenty of cuts to show for it too, but this is no training exercise with a soft pallet to catch my fall. The ground rushes up full of weeds and rock and hard earth, and I scramble to remember what I was taught. Bend my knees, protect my head, twist my body around, preparing to roll when I land. If I don't, I could snap an arm or ankle, or even my neck. I hold my breath and wait for the impact. When it comes, the air gets knocked out of my lungs. I tumble over the grass, bruises forming with each collision. My head spins, and it keeps on spinning long after I come to a stop at the bottom of the muddy hill. Seconds pass before I can breathe again. I'm lying on my stomach with my face smashed against a slick of mud. I clench my fingers and toes. Nothing appears broken, but when I try to sit up, my vision goes sideways, and I throw up the meager breakfast I had at headquarters. My forehead sinks back into the mud, and I tell myself to get up. The train might be gone, but it won't take long before the Nazis double back to find us. And that's when I hear a scream. Sabine. I push myself up, and a shooting pain throbs at my left wrist. I can tell that it's sprained, but tending to it will have to wait because I spot Sabine not far ahead, lying curled on the ground. We're both alive at least, but we're not alone. Schuster has followed us. That lunatic must have jumped from the train too, judging by the way he's limping. He doesn't seem too bothered by his leg, though, because I can see the murder written in his eyes even from where I'm standing. With his hands outstretched, he grabs Sabine by the neck and starts choking her. I ignore the agony in my wrist and stagger toward them, watching helplessly as Sabine tries to fight him off. She begins to turn purple, and I clench my fists because they're the only weapon I have left. We had to leave all our pistols and knives behind on the train, but then I remember that I'm not as defenseless as I'd thought. "Schuster!" I scream. I'm nearly there. "It's me you want!" His face jerks up and a scowl spreads over it. Underneath him, Sabine doesn't move, and I don't know if she's unconscious or worse. While Schuster drops her and drags himself toward me, I kick off both my shoes and twist off one heel. When he lunges at me, I'm ready. I jump backward and swipe at him with the hidden blade, but he's just as quick, and my knife hisses through air. He comes at me again, and this time I don't have the room to spin away. We fall to the ground. Stars hover in my eyes, but I blink them away because he's trying to rip the knife from my fingers. Wriggling my knee free, I heave it into Schuster's belly. While he's stunned from the blow, I stab the blade between his ribs, turning his grunt into a scream. I twist the knife deeper, causing as much damage as I can because that's what I was taught. Schuster rolls off me, blood pouring from his wound. There's so much that it pools around him, but I haven't dealt the killing blow yet. He could survive like this, at least for an hour, enough time for help to arrive. By then, he could tell the Nazis what direction Sabine and I have fled in and give them an exact description of what we look like. I hold the knife tight. He has to be finished off. "What are you waiting for?" I whirl around, the knife hot in my hands, to find Sabine heaving herself toward me. She holds one arm tight against her side, but at least she's upright and breathing. "You're alive! Yes!" she says. She jerks her chin at Schuster, who's moaning and clutching his side, trying to keep the blood from leaking out of him. "Be done with it!" I kneel next to Schuster with my heart pumping fast. I can draw the blade across his neck or thrust it into his heart. A quick slash or twist and he'll be gone. He's already halfway there. I raise the weapon, but my palms begin to sweat, just like what happened with Trevor. "Give me the knife," Sabine says. I jerk my hand away. This is my job, not hers. I wipe the sweat off my hands and position myself above Schuster. I couldn't ask for an easier target. He's lost so much blood to give any fight. I locate the softest spot on his neck. "Quickly now, Lucy." "We're running out of time," she huffs. I thrust the blade in before she can take it from me. Schuster splutters out blood and nausea climbs through my stomach, but I harden myself against the animal sounds that he makes. If I don't, I might lose the rest of my breakfast. Finally, Schuster stops breathing, and Sabine nudges me aside to thrust her fingers at his jugular. "He's dead," she says this without feeling and cleans her hand on the grass, leaving a smear of blood on the thick green blades. "Take the knife. We can put it to good use." I nod but make no move to yank out the blade. I blink at my hands, my traitorous hands. Schuster was going to kill us both, and yet I hesitated. Again. Sabine frowns, then sighs. "It'll get easier, the killing." "Thanks for the pep talk," I shoot back. I don't want her pity. "I wasn't mocking you." Do you think that my first mission was easy? It wasn't until my fourth that I didn't want to vomit right afterward. Slowly, I study her. Sabine, getting a case of the nerves before a hit. I wonder if she's saying that for my benefit, but she's never been one to spare my feelings. You could have told me that before my first mission. Who knows? It could have helped. I did try, she quips. Before I can call her a liar, she starts snapping orders at me. Help me with my shoulder before the Germans send reinforcements. Is it broken? Dislocated. I assume you were trained for this sort of injury? Of course. My OSS instructors taught me first aid and beyond, cleaning wounds and sewing stitches and setting bones, because spies in the field don't often have hospitals at their disposal. It's been months since I've used my skills, but I don't tell that to Sabine. Instead, I fetch her a stick to bite down on and tell her to shut her eyes. I'll keep them open, thank you, she replies. Suit yourself. Ready? On the count of 3. 1, 2. With one rapid motion, I realign the joint. Sabine utters a filthy curse that would make an old French sailor blush. You told me on the count of 3! Did it work or not? It did, she says, glaring knives at me. But next time, if there is a next time, I'd rather be ready for the pain than be taken by surprise. Next time you can pop your shoulder in yourself, I mumble, but it's not loud enough for her to hear. It doesn't matter anyway. Sabine no longer pays me any attention. She's reached into her purse, our only piece of luggage that has survived our escape, and takes out the compass and handkerchief Harkin gave her. She uses both to scour our new surroundings, an unceasing patchwork of sheep pastures and apple orchards that Normandy is famed for. It almost reminds me of home. When we were young, Mama would bring Theo and me to a farm outside the city where we'd pick strawberries as big as our thumbs. Back then, Papa would join us too, and he'd treat us all to Italian ices at Mr. Benedetti's cafe on the way home. This was before their restaurant closed and the drinking began. The memories of those outings course over me, but those strawberry fields didn't carry the scent of fresh blood on them like the one I'm standing in now. Sabine swears under her breath, and I glance up. We're nearly 50 kilometers from Cherbourg, she tells me. I feel like cursing myself. Looking the way we do, with dirt and blood smeared all over our clothes, we can't exactly hop onto the next train and expect to go unnoticed. We'll have to walk to the safe house through this Nazi-infested region of France. Do you have extra papers at least? She asks. Thankfully, I do, as does Sabine. But not even these papers will help us reach the safe house any faster. It's not like we can double back to the train station and buy more tickets. We need to walk northwest. Sabine chops her hand through the air. Are you sure? Certainly. I know this area. You've been here before? Not here exactly, but yes. My father's family hails from the town of Brix. We'd spend weeks along the coast during the summer, my brother and I. Well, that's something I never knew before. Sabine has never mentioned a brother to Tilly or me. She rarely speaks about her family or her life before covert ops, as if she sprouted out of the earth at the start of the war, fully formed and ready to kill Allied traitors. She's like Major Harkin in that way, and I wonder if she's taken a cue from him by keeping everyone she meets an arm's length away from her. But her revelation about her brother is neither here nor there, given where we're standing. Shouldn't you have mentioned that you've been to Normandy? I ask. I didn't think it would concern you or the mission, she says with a shrug. Then she speeds ahead of me, showing no sign that she dislocated her shoulder recently or that she wears a ring of bruises around her neck. After I stick the knife into my shoe and put them both back on, Sabine and I forge deeper into the countryside. Once we put a few miles behind us, we turn out our pockets and dump out the contents of Sabine's purse to survey our remaining supplies. It isn't much at all. 1 pistol pen, 1 revolver with 2 remaining bullets, the dagger from my shoe, and a thin stack of forged francs. It's paltry pickings compared to what we left on the train. I can't help but wince thinking about all those grenades, pistols, and our bag of Aunt Jemima that now belong to the Nazis. A gunshot pops in the distance, and Sabine shoves everything back into her purse. Go, go, she whispers. I stumble to my feet, but tears sting my eyes when I put too much weight on my wrist. When Sabine looks for me behind her, she scowls. What are you doing? We have to hurry, she says. I'm trying. Try harder. She returns to my side and attempts to push me along, but I jerk away from her. If I'm holding you back, then go on without me, I snarl. Don't be ridiculous. Just go. Isn't that what you wanted in the first place? She looks like I've smacked her. Why must you assume the worst about me? I gape at her words. Me? Assume the worst about her? Ever since I set foot in Paris, you've treated me like a pebble in your shoe. How can you think that after all those times I tried to help you? She throws her hands up in the air, and I figure that she'll leave me for good now, but she does the complete opposite. She clenches onto my arm and drags me forward. Enough of this. Major Harkin gave us orders. Move! I try to wrest myself free from her, but Sabine only tightens her hold. I'm sure this is Harkin's doing. He must have told Sabine to stick to me like glue, and that's why she's towing me through a copse of trees that look older than Charlemagne himself. Yet all the while, her question lingers in my ears. How exactly has she helped me over these last few months? She's always sniffing at me and correcting how I pour my tea and saying that I should hold my dagger this way. If that's what she calls helpful, then she can keep her hen pecking to herself. As we draw closer to Cherbourg, the tiny villages grow into plump towns. More than once, we have to lie flat on our stomachs as we hear a truck rolling in the distance. We've been walking for hours, but we're still miles away from the safe house. Stop. We have to stop, I say, panting. There's no time to catch our breath. It's not that. Look around us. I wave at the sweeping fields that we're standing in, as vast as a ripe green sea. I count 3 farmhouses within eyeshot, and who knows if the people living there are friendlies or German collaborators. Sabine won't hear of it. Let's push a little farther. And risk someone spotting us? Harkin may have left her in charge of this mission, but I won't let her risk our necks over this. A little farther could lead us right into a Nazi trap and then a prison cell. The Nazis only need a pair of binoculars to find us out here in the open. She plants 2 fists on her hips, looking ready to carry me to the safe house herself, but even she must see how futile it is to keep pressing forward. Very well, she says grudgingly. We'd better wait until nightfall, but we can't stay here. She points a little ways north. Follow me. We settle in the shadows of an abandoned church that lies half crumbled in a fallow pasture. Its windows are long gone, and a furry layer of moss has covered its stones, but it's cool and quiet, and we couldn't ask for much more than that, aside from a pitcher of water and a plateful of Mama's fricasseed chicken with a great helping of her tarte Normandie for dessert. That was Theo's favorite meal, and Mama would cook it for his birthday every year. On his birthday this year, however, not long after Theo passed, Mama had spent hours shut in her room, while Papa had left for who knows where. I took over both their shifts at the bakery and begged Mr. Richard not to let them go, which he half-heartedly agreed to because it wouldn't look very patriotic to fire the parents of a dead soldier. At least Ruthie stopped by to keep me company. She didn't say much. That's Ruthie's quiet way. But she swept the floors and smiled at the customers, even though she was hurting as much as I was. I couldn't help but think about the life she and Theo could have had. A house by the beach, a couple of children with Theo's smile and Ruthie's smarts. They would have called me Aunt Lucy. Thinking about all of that nearly did me in that day, especially with the weight of Theo's last letter in my pocket. But Ruthie must have sensed this and placed a warm hand on my shoulder. I wondered then what it might have felt like to have a sister. Sabine and I take shifts sleeping. When it's my turn, I try to get comfortable, but a cloud of gnats buzzes around my head and darts in and out of my ears. I manage to get in a few winks, but my eyelids are heavy when Sabine wakes me up. Quiet, Sabine whispers. It's me. I take a long look at her, then all around us. The world has shifted since I fell asleep. The sun has vanished and has been replaced with a scattering of stars. The air is chilled too, breathing goosebumps over my skin and making me long for a knitted blanket to wrap around myself. And that's not all that's changed. Where did you find those clothes? I ask. Sabine is wearing a faded red dress with brown buttons down the front. She's also sporting new cotton stockings rather than her shredded old ones from the train. I took them from a clothesline. There's a little farmhouse not far from here, she explains. Then she presents me with a plain blue dress and a matching knit sweater. We'll need these more than the farmer's wife I took them from. I left a few francs for her troubles. Someone could have seen you. I'm not the only one thinking about the farmer or his wife catching Sabine in the act. There could have been 1 or 2 Nazis billeted at that farmhouse as well. When the Germans invaded France, they didn't bother building barracks to house their soldiers. Instead, they did what Nazis do best. They stole. They claimed apartments, houses, and even entire hotels for themselves. You think I'd be so careless? Says Sabine. She holds out the clothes for me to take. Do you want these or not? I mumble a merci and snatch the dress from her. I'm so eager to shake off my dirty clothes that I forget to feel guilty that we've stolen a poor French woman's clothing. But field agents